when I was thinking about starting this YouTube channel, there was a lot of apprehension around doing this, and the main reason was I just didn't think anyone was ever going to watch it. And the primary reason why I thought that was the element of writing every day, of just filming yourself writing every day. It's inherently boring. Just sitting there, typing at a computer for hours, and then just taking, a select clip of that and putting like 10 minutes of that on the internet. Who at the time I was like, well, who the heck is going to watch this, right? Like, who's going to just watch a video with me just typing at a computer every day? And yet, one of the reasons why I actually decided to go forward with starting this channel was primarily for that reason. I mean, there were other things as well, but one of the main reasons why I decided to do that is because I think people need to see that the process of writing, the process of really anything, is a lot of drudgery. Most days when I'm writing here, it's not this grand creative fulfilling day. I mentioned yesterday was like one of those, maybe that nice eureka day, that day where the muse was firing and I came up with that nice cool idea of how I'm going to tell the story. That day was awesome, right? Yesterday's video was great, but if you've been following this vlog here, I mean, how many days am I talking about that, right? How many days am I talking about, hey, this is this cool idea, I'm really jazzed up and fired up about it? A lot of my days, if you've seen them, are pretty dull, like pretty boring. I mean, obviously I try to come up with interesting topics here, but for me, writing, a lot of this is just drudgery. I mean, if maybe one day every 3 weeks I get a day like yesterday, that means that 5% of the time it's really nice and creative and fulfilling, and then the other 95% basically is drudgery. It's the very dull, boring, sitting at the computer and just doing the work. And I think that is probably maybe the most important thing for someone that's trying to write to understand, is that a lot of it's boring. A lot of people that start to write, they quit very early on because they're not inspired anymore. The muse goes away. They talk about not being able to write because they don't feel the muse. They don't feel that creative passion for their project. A lot of people just start, write for maybe a few days, a few weeks, whatever. I've gone through this myself, and the passion dies. The creativity dies, and what happens is you're left with just work. That's what it is. It's a bit like a fire, right? A fire burns really, really bright, really, really fast, and then it's coals. It's coals. It's embers. It's that nice red glow, right? It's not this burning thing. It's a red glow. It sustains itself for a very long time, but it's not this raging, very passionate thing. And that it needs to be understood that if you're going to be writing, if you're going to be pursuing, I think really anything, much of it's going to be dull. A lot of it is going to be very dull. It's going to be very boring. It's going to be a lot of really a lot of blue collar work. I mean, it's no different for me getting up and going to the keyboard than it's been for me to get up and go to a regular day job. You know what I mean? It feels it feels better for me, like by no mistake, but it doesn't feel as soulless. It doesn't feel as empty. I'm not saying that, but it feels the same, where it's like, okay, it's time to write. I have to get up and go to the keyboard and work. The mentality is still the same. And so if you are someone that maybe is caught up in that like you start your projects, you start your stories, and you stop, and you get a chapter 2 in, you write for several weeks. Maybe for me, like the passion, like in a story, the creative muse in a story, like dies off in the first week. I've said before that for me, like the most creative time of any story is like the first couple days. Like the first few days, I am on fire. I could write 12-hour days pretty much on a story. Like 4 or 5 days in, that goes away, and it just becomes just work after that. There's no more, the excitement dies off very, very quickly. And So if you are someone that maybe goes through the same thing, if you know you've been writing for a long, you know, or starting and stopping writing like I have quite often, and you're stopping because it gets boring, it gets dull, you feel like you're on a plateau. Yeah, that's normal. That's the life of a writer. I mean, again, you have to sort of, you've got to do it for the small things. You have to do it basically for finding the small things in the drudgery. I mentioned before, like just being able to fix a sentence. Like you should be able to, for me, you know, it's fixing a sentence. It's finding that small, all right, making that small tweak that makes something a little bit better. It brings it up the quality of your work just a half a percentage point, maybe, right? Like, oh, this one sentence, if I rewrote it this way, I'm shaving 1 to 2 words off, and it's more concise, and it's clear, and it sounds better just written than you want to read it. Yay. Like, you should be getting your little, you know, dopamine spike, your little serotonin spike, whatever chemical reaction happens in the brain that rewards you. You should be getting that from just the small things, and you need to find that. But that only comes with time. Like that, finding that sort of that joy in the small thing of what you're doing, that comes with time. I mean, it's no different than any other activity. The martial artist who needs to practice, you know, 1,000 punches a day is not getting up every day, going to the bag, I imagine, and is like, oh, I'm so excited to try you know, this punch 1,000 times. It's the joy in doing the act, in trying to perfect the act, rather than the joy carrying you to it. I guess another way of saying it is, the reward and the joy comes from what you do. It's not something that brings you to it. It's a product of what you do. It's not something that comes before it. It's not a, you know, to expect that you're going to get the joy before the activity, to expect that you're going to have that sort of creative fire before you do something. That's a bit like saying, all right, start a fire, and then I'm going to load the kindling and the wood and the paper in after that. It's like, no, it's the reverse. You got to load the fireplace first and then light it. You don't get the fire first before you load it. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, you know, today, just to circle back, you know, today, a lot of progress, but yeah, it's been dull. I mean, it's been drudgery. It's not bad. I don't mind, but again, if you're watching these videos, that's the one thing I'm hoping people get out of this. It's the idea that writing, it's boring. It's dull. It's not an exciting thing necessarily to watch. It's probably just almost as dull to do. The joy you get is seeing what you've done, not the joy that carries you to the keyboard.